Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe, and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. This is a podcast where people from all walks of life will be sharing their stories and the wisdom they have gained from their life experiences. In no way is this show offering any kind of advice or counsel. These conversations will be of a very sensitive nature, so please be respectful in your comments, and thank you for watching. Hello, everyone. My name is Trish, and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. Today, the topic today is going to be the road from addiction to recovery. And I have a very special guest here today, Mike, my friend Mike, who is a recovering addict and is also, what is your exact title?
As far as what?
Well, I know you're an addiction counselor, but is
Where I
that the
work,
right term?
I'm a lead counselor, and it's like addictions counseling. There's many different ways of presenting it, but it's mostly like drug and alcohol counselor.
Okay, awesome. And I just love that, because how cool is it that you're helping people from firsthand experience? So not only do you have your schooling, but you also have your life experience, which is incredibly powerful to me. I
Thank
think
you.
it's really great. The first question that I have for you is, um, what is it that you think that drew you to becoming an addict? What was it that you think turned you in that direction? And that's a big question. So,
I mean, for me, I could almost with 100% certainty say it was just really low self-esteem, lack of belief in myself, a desperate need to belong. I didn't feel like I belonged to my family. I didn't really feel like I belonged in school, like with the people I hung out with. I just felt so much different. I was skinny, really skinny, and awkward and clumsy and knock-kneed. You name it, it was me. You know what I mean? Looked like this stick with a mop on my head. And I don't know, like I fit in with some of these other kids who maybe were like me, maybe were a little bit different, but we weren't the norm. We were a little bit on the wild side and willing to experiment. I mean, I remember I couldn't wait. We was in the sixth grade and we were like trying all different ways to get the older guys to sell us weed, and they wouldn't. They were saying, we got to be in the seventh grade. And we were trying all different ways to like, really, that made a big difference. But we were trying all different ways to get these guys to sell us weed. We just wanted to do that. We wanted to be part of that crowd. That was the cool crowd. We were just a little bit younger. We weren't fitting in with them yet, but we were about to. And I actually have a picture of that day, my last day of sixth grade, where one of us got weed. I don't remember who and how, but one of us got weed and we smoked weed. During school hours, the school took us to a park not too far away, and me and three other guys, I think it was three of us, went like underneath these bushes and smoked weed for the first time. And I didn't even get high, but I remember being so scared that we were going to get caught. And I also remember saying that this changes everything. I made that decision. I just kind of remember just saying, you know what? I mean, I did this. Now I'm going to go the whole way. Wherever these guys go, I'm following.
wow. And that just happens to so many people. And the thing is it happens when you're so young and impressionable. That I've that's in my family. We've talked about this, and yeah, I mean, and even sometimes there's pressure, peer pressure, as part of the deal. So yeah, that totally makes sense. And so that led you on a path. And is there anything specific you want to share with the people about that path that led you on a long stint of addiction? And I would you were, I mean, when was it? How long did it take before you got sober, I guess? There was a lot that happened between then. I know there was a lot
Yeah,
that happened.
I got clean. I went to rehab in January of 1999 and would get these little stints, 30, 40, 50 days clean. And then I would fall and use usually for a day or two and then come back. And then I want to say it was like the end of June that I went on a hard relapse and just went crazy, just completely crazy. I went from smoking crack and drinking a couple of beers to smoking hundreds of dollars worth of crack, shooting
Oh my
hundreds of
gosh.
dollars worth of heroin, and just drinking from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep every day up until August 9th. Um, and I woke up August 10th and I had $100 in my pocket and I was ready to go cop. Well, I wasn't ready. I was trying to get ready to go cop. My phone kept ringing and it was the guy who was my NA sponsor, and I wouldn't answer it. But I was really messed up and I didn't want to talk to him. I wanted to go spend his last 100 and then I was going to go get clean. I remember telling myself that. And he kept calling me and I was really messed up. And I remember the last time he called, I picked up the phone and was screaming at it, just saying, "Leave me the F alone. I just want to do this." And I accidentally picked it up like when I did that. So he was listening to me. And I heard
Oh
this little
wow.
voice said, "Mike, what the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Paul." You
Oh
know,
my gosh.
I didn't think
Wow.
it happened, but he was on the line. He heard me screaming. He goes, "What the hell's going on? What are you doing?" He goes, "I know you've been using. You haven't been around for months. Everybody told me." He was on vacation, and he had just got back that day. And I told him, "Yeah, I've been using, and I can't take it anymore. It got really, really bad. I'm spending $1,000 a day between crack and heroin, and just can't do this anymore." You know, I mean, I was really skinny and really sick. And he said, "Well, go to a meeting tonight." I said, "Not tonight, man. I got $100 left. I'll go tomorrow." I remember he said to me, I
Oh,
said to him, I said, "I'll go tomorrow. I promise, man. I have no money and I have no way of getting more money. This is my last 100. So just let me do it." And he had said, uh, he, he said, "Don't spend it. Just hold on to it and go to the meeting tonight." And I remember thinking, dude, you're out of your mind. Who in their right mind on a run is going to not spend their last 100? And he said something to the effect of, "If you spend that $100, you're going to die of addiction. If you don't spend that $100, you'll never have to die from addiction. You'll live and be a recovering addict, and you'll never use again." And I don't
wow.
know how, man. I mean, so he couldn't come to the meeting because he was on vacation for 3 months or something like that. And he kept calling me, and I kept saying, "Yeah, I'll go." And then, like, I remember feeling a lot better. I was still in withdrawal, but feeling two different kind of things going on here. I wanted crack and I wanted heroin, and the crack would make me not be able to talk very well. But that I got over that, and it was like I, I don't remember. I thought it was like an hour or two before the meeting. So I got in my car and I was going to split and drive to Philadelphia. Well, no, not Philadelphia. I was going to drive to Harrisburg. I only had $100 left, and I mean, I get in my car. I lived in this big house and had this big driveway, and I back out of my damn garage and I see this green pickup truck driving up my driveway, and it's this freaking kid Blaine, this 19-year-old kid who I had become friends with. He was a recovering guy, and he was sponsored by my sponsor too. And I was like, "Oh shit, man, it's not meeting time." And it was meeting time, and I was trying to talk him out of it. I was like, "I'm not going, man. I'm not going." And he talked me into going. And I didn't spend 100. And I went to a
Wow.
meeting. Some knucklehead sitting next to me kept poking me in the ribs, saying it gets better if you talk about it. And I was just sick. And I mean, I had not done anything in a while, and I was in withdrawal. And I mean, there was just sweat pouring out of me, and I probably didn't smell good, and like I didn't feel good. And he just kept poking me, and I wanted to punch him in the face. But I
Mm,
eventually shared, and I don't remember anything that I shared. I just remember a lot of people after the meeting, despite how bad I smelled,
mm.
um, coming up to me and hugging me and telling me to keep coming. And I thought for sure, like, as soon as this meeting's over, I'm going home, I'm getting in my car, and I'm going to go cop. And somehow we ended up at my sponsor Paul's house, me, Blaine, and a couple of other men. And all I kept thinking about, once we're done at this stupid house, I'm going home and I'm going to go cop. And for some reason, when I got home, God gave me that one night and he let me go to sleep. Like I went home and I put my head down for a minute and I woke up and it was morning. And it was really weird, you know, I mean, because I was very sick. I was in really bad withdrawal, like the worst.
It seems
And
like
I,
what your friend said on the phone, it reverberated inside of you, the power of that choice, that
mm,
it could mean literally life or death. Maybe somewhere inside you, you knew that to be true. Do you think? And it's stayed
I
with
don't
you.
remember. I mean, it was 20,
Hmm.
almost 22 years
Long time
ago.
ago. Yeah.
I remember just thinking, man, I just want to get this last one in. I just want to, you know, I mean, I'm really sick. I just want to get straight for one last time before I go into this godforsaken withdrawal that I knew I was going to have a bad withdrawal. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that one last one in. And I wasn't even sure if $100 would have done it, to be honest with you. Um, I'm sorry, my allergies are driving me crazy. Um, but when I woke up the next day, um, phone rang within 20 minutes of when I woke up, and it was a friend, and he said, "I'm coming to get you." And these men, there was 6 or 7 of them that spent a lot of time with me. You know, I was
Oh
lucky.
my
I
gosh.
was self-employed. I was starting a business with another friend of mine, and I was working from my house. Um, so I worked basically my own hours. But these men pretty much kept watch over me. You know what I mean? Like
It's
almost
wonderful.
24 hours a day. They'd
Oh,
come over and
wow.
hang out with me while I worked. We went to lunch. We went back and went to dinner. Went to a meeting. Hung out with a bunch of recovering people after the meeting, before and after the meeting. And I mean, I can't tell you how horrible and beautiful in the same time that next month was, because I went through
All the physical
10
withdrawals.
days, I want to say 7 to 10 days of just this physical withdrawal that was unbelievable. I didn't sleep. I mean, everything that they tell you that happened. I mean, I had diarrhea, I was throwing up, nose running, bones hurt, no sleep. Everything I ate, I threw up. I mean, could not sleep and could not stop thinking about getting high. But these men made it better. You know, they made it better.
Wow.
I
And
don't know
that's how
how.
you finally got
Yeah,
free of
August 9th.
addiction.
August 10th was like when I woke up August 10th, I had 24 hours clean. It was the first 24 hours clean I had in a couple of months. And it was my last first 24 hours clean, if that makes sense to you. You know, it's
Oh,
like that was
yes.
my last first day clean was August 10th, 1999. With the grace of a loving
Amazing.
God,
And your
21 and a half years
angelic
later.
friends, like to me, I consider people like that angels on earth that take the time to save another person. They take their time and their energy to be there for you.
That's how
And
the 12-step community works.
they didn't judge you. They knew firsthand what you were going through, which is just bless those people that did that for you.
I think
It's
they judged by
wonderful.
the way I smelled, because I tell you what, man. I mean,
Oh,
I got out of the shower stinking, because something about withdrawal,
it's
all
so
those
toxic.
toxins are leaving your body, and I don't remember anybody saying anything about it, but I remember noticing it myself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just thinking, God, how they sitting here? Because I would at that point in my life, man, if somebody smelled that bad sitting next to me, I'd have to say, dude, go do something.
You
No,
go
but
do something. You
nobody
smell.
ever
Yeah.
said that. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
that's wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, because I was going to ask you, if there was an aha moment, but you were saved. You had people that reached out and saved you.
There are
That's
many aha
that's
moments in the
incredible.
21 years of my recovery. Millions of them, you
Many,
know.
any that stick out to you, things that you figured out maybe about yourself and why you became an addict, you know, uh,
I don't really
anything
have
in
any that
particular?
know why I became an addict. I mean, really, it just, I believe it just because of the way I was brought up, and how I felt about myself, that it was destiny. I mean, I remember when it started, you know, I mean, I wasn't an addict. I mean, some people say that you're born one, and I believe that because it's genetically predisposed sometimes, and my chances were there. Um, I mean, I was 14 years old when I got into my first band, and would be playing in clubs in Manhattan in the late 70s in Manhattan.
Wow,
That when the
cool.
punk scene was really big, and I remember there was one guy in the first band I was in who was a heroin addict, and I didn't know it at the time. And like after a gig, he'd disappear and then come back, and like he'd be falling asleep. And I would say to the other guys in the band, "Man, I'm so excited after this. How is he falling asleep?" And they would say like that happens when you get old. He was like 25. He was the oldest guy in the band,
Oh my gosh.
and I kind of bought into it. But it wasn't long after that. I wasn't doing heroin, but I was drinking heavily, and taking pills and coke, whatever was offered to me. I mean, I was exposed to things that 14-year-olds normally don't get exposed to.
Especially
Um,
in the music industry and especially back in the day.
right.
It
So
was
one
so
of my
prevalent.
aha moments was I was so shy and so scared of people, but when two or three drinks and maybe a Valium or something like that were in me, I could talk to anyone. I became a different person. I was very outgoing and loud and obnoxious. Didn't care what I said. Didn't care who got scared. I mean, nobody really got scared. I weighed about 120 pounds,
Mm,
but people would get disgusted. But I didn't care. I mean, I just found that really opened me up. So I would do it more and more and more. And then
yeah.
when I guess like I wasn't doing cocaine yet. I remember that I wasn't doing cocaine yet, but the first time I did cocaine was probably the first time I realized I did something that I shouldn't be doing. You know, I did it with three other guys and we split like a half a gram between us. And if you know anything about cocaine, that's not a lot. It's very little. And never did cocaine before, but loved it so much. And
Mm,
when we were done, these guys all went home and went to sleep. And I walked, I want to say 4 miles to the next neighborhood where we bought it. Never heard of or seen this bar before in my life, but found it. On the way there, I stole like 3 or 4 car stereos, found the bar, found the dude who had the coke, traded him the stereos for more coke, and walked back home. Like 16 years old. That was the first time I ever did coke, and remember being done with that and wanting more. And it was like
mm.
6 o'clock in the morning, so I knew the bar was closed. I couldn't go back there, and I mean, I really thought about stealing my mother's money and finding more, and but fell asleep. But I remember waking up saying, "Holy shit!" Like I walked all the way to Ridgewood from Middle Village. It's far, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
I mean, I just remember I stole car stereo. I never stole car stereos in my life. Never knew how to get into a car. You know what I
You
mean?
just did it. It was just like you had to do it so
I don't
you
know
could
how. I
get your
don't remember.
supply.
I remember there were some kids that I grew up with who were stealing cars and stealing stereos and stuff. And I remember them telling me how they were doing it or whatever. I mean, I don't remember much about it, but I remember doing that. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, you're like,
Mhm.
"Was that me?" Um, Now I know through the years you had tried to quit several times, were there
Not
a lot of
really.
attempts?
No, no, not for me. I loved it. I mean, I loved the
Mm,
lifestyle, and I got in trouble immediately with cocaine. I mean, within a year, I
mm.
had some people trying to like I was selling it for some people, and I always did it all, and I owed them the money, and they would come to my house looking for me. You know what I mean? Um, I got arrested at 17. Me and my friends were selling angel dust in our neighborhood, and that would support the coke habit that I had. But these mafia guys came to us and said, "You can't sell that angel dust here. Look, there's cops everywhere. I mean, we need privacy. We need this neighborhood to be a safe place. And you got all these crazy people running around." And they gave us each an ounce of coke. Me and two other of my friends. I did the whole thing in like one night.
Oh, oh my
And the
gosh.
next day, I started selling angel dust because I wanted to pay them back. I didn't want to get my ass kicked, and I got arrested. And these guys were pissed. I mean, they were going to kick my ass. My dad knew them,
Mm,
I mean, I can't say he was part of it, but he was definitely involved in that lifestyle in some way or another, and talked to them. And as long as I went to jail for 4 months. I was sentenced to 6 months, and I went to jail for 4 months. And they was like, as long as he goes to jail, when he comes out, he doesn't mess with that shit. He's fine. So
so
I
when
went
you
to
were in
jail.
jail, were you sober the whole time? I would
No,
imagine. Yeah,
no, no. There
right.
was there was
Ways.
there was weed, and they had this booze that they made that was disgusting, but I would do it once in a while. I mean, for the most part, I was sober. It wasn't something that was there every day and you had to pay for it, and I didn't have money. I had protection um, from some other men from my neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, I went to Rikers Island for 4 months, and when I got out, I stopped messing with the angel dust shit. I mean, it actually, um, I'm trying to, it was a long time ago. I think that like right when I went to jail after I went to court, a few of the guys that were responsible for like the large amounts of the angel dust got arrested and it was gone. It wasn't really in our neighborhood anymore. Like anybody who wanted to smoke it had to go to Harlem or something like that, from what I remember. But I was done with it. I mean, when I got out, I was about my career. I mean, I said, I just want to be a musician. I want to stop this involvement with my neighborhood, so to say, you know, because a lot of the
Mhm.
guys in my neighborhood, they weren't musicians, they weren't into that, they were into another lifestyle that I just didn't want any part of, and I had spent enough time in jail to never want to go back. So I focused on my music career, and the addiction slowly progressed over years, you know.
Yeah, and it's again, especially in the music scene, it's so prevalent. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah. I
know
mean,
anyone when I was in music that wasn't involved in either drinking, some kind of drugs, or
oh my God.
rarely.
I
I mean,
mean,
well, not rarely, but
when you're in
not
well-known
rarely,
bands too,
but
it's
a
like
lot of people,
everybody's
yeah.
offering it to you. I just remember playing shows at clubs, and man, I never had no money, but I'd be drinking and snorting coke every time, all the time. You know, people would just offer it. You know, the more known you were, the more you had. It was just crazy. There was years like between 18 and 21. Life was crazy. I mean, just my whole life was rock and roll. I never had a job. My dad and mom were both Sicilian, and I mean, if you ever see what I looked like back then, I was wild. I had really long hair and wore makeup and wild clothes, and
Rebel.
slept all day and partied all night. But it got bad, you know. In between 18 and 21 is when I started doing things like stealing from my mother, stealing from my brother. I remember my brother had a student loan and had a lot of cash in his room, and I stole half of it. Yeah, I mean,
And
because once
so
I,
people do things when, like what happened to you, that they would never do normally.
well,
Would you say
absolutely,
that if you're not
and
if you're not, don't do criminal things when you're sober, but the, because people, I mean, in my experience, if you're under the influence, you do things you would never do. Like,
well, addiction's a disease, plain and simple. It changes the thinking in the person who's addicted. It changes. Now, people really don't get a grip or an understanding of what that really means. I mean, it means we don't have the power to overrule bad decisions. Like our brain is run by the pleasure center of our brain, and the wiring in our brain, you know, the synapses and the chemical reactions in our brain are different than the person who doesn't have the disease of addiction. There's science behind this. It's not just, you know, oh, we're messed up and strung out and need more because we're going to go through withdrawal, because there's only certain drugs that have withdrawal. Crack doesn't, or cocaine doesn't, but the mental desire for it is beyond comprehensible, and that's because our brain works to get more. And the parts of our brain that are responsible for feeling pleasure, which the drugs give us, overrule the parts of our brain that are responsible for making sound decisions. The parts of our brain that is responsible for pleasure could send signals to other parts of the brain that are responsible for stress, anxiety, pain in the body, and send these signals out that will cause physical and mental cravings that you just cannot have the responsible part of your mind decide over. It just doesn't happen.
that cognitive reasoning is
It's gone,
gone.
pretty much gone. I mean, you could wake up and feel guilty and say, I'll never do this again. I've done it. You know, I've done it a million times where I said, I'll never ever do this again, and do it again that day. I mean, it
So
just,
you didn't have, like, you didn't try to quit several times and then relapse. You didn't have that. It
no,
was just continue for you. Because I've always,
pretty
I
much.
think it's, my brother went through where he would try, but he always relapsed. And unfortunately, I can't ask him these questions of why someone relapses, but I imagine it's obviously what you're saying. I'm not afflicted with this condition.
Right.
So I might not be asking all of the pertinent questions, but one question that does come to mind is you had said that when you do quit, they say 30 days, and you were saying that's inaccurate. You don't feel that that's accurate. It really
The
takes
30 days
much
of
longer.
treatment, it depends. It really depends. Like I did 28 days of treatment, got out of treatment at the end of January and didn't get clean till August, and they suggested me to go to another program that was 90 days and I wouldn't do it. Um, with the knowledge that I have now, I mean, it really depends on the person and how far they've gone and what they've done and what they're carrying with them. I mean, I use drugs regularly, daily for 18 or 19 years, and I did some horrific things. I stole, I I cheated, I lied, the whole gambit. You know what I mean? I got fired from many, many bands and jobs and lost relationships, and I carried around a boatload of guilt with me.
My
Um,
brother, yes,
I carried a
yes.
boatload of guilt and shame, and so by the grace of God, I was able to stay clean. But it really took me, I want to say, somewhere around the area of 12 or 13 years to start really touching on that. Like in NA and in AA, they have 12 steps that helps you through a lot of that stuff. But man, it's deep seated in a lot of people. And I mean,
Yes.
I
The
was walking
guilt
around
part is
thinking,
probably really hard. The guilt part, I would think. I know my brother suffered with that tremendously because he would do something bad, feel guilty, and that would drive him to drink more and do
well,
more
right.
bad things. And then it was just like this vicious cycle that he
I
was
think that
unable to
the
get out from underneath.
for me, the guilt just added on to the self-loathing that I had a large part of my life. That
Mm.
I always dressed up the outside to make it look like things were together, but they were falling apart on the inside always. Even after I got clean. I mean, so I had gotten lucky when I got clean and started a company with a friend of mine, and we made a lot of money. I was making well over 4 or 5 years and had a lot of things that made it look like my life was really together. Like I was this mess before who couldn't live in the same house for more than 3 months. And now I have a 4 bedroom house with 4 acres of land, and I'm driving Corvettes and wearing expensive clothes. Um, and I correlated that with being better.
Having self-esteem,
But
a
the truth
sense.
was, when all that fell apart after like 4 or 5 years, my self-esteem was crushed. And I realized that, man, I really just can't stand myself. And having screwed that up, that business and getting married and leaving my wife and having her, whatever wasn't gone after the business fell apart, she took. And I just, I didn't put that on anybody but me. I just despised myself.
You took all the blame.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you felt
yeah, and that was with
responsible.
5 years clean, and I still didn't start recognizing that my self-esteem was my biggest problem. That my guilt and shame and self-loathing were the three biggest things that just really kept me from growing as a human, and and,
Mhm.
and like I'd be involved in relationships that I shouldn't have been. I mean, I should have had more love for myself to allow things that took place in relationships with me. But I I felt that if I lost that relationship, that would make me even worse. I didn't have the courage to say, "No, I'm too good for this mouth." You know what I mean? Um, and after I want to say in 2011 is when my business finally fell apart for good, and I was in a relationship with a girl that fell apart basically at the same time. So I had about 12 years clean. It was about then. The lowest point of my life was with 12 years clean. It
And you were
wasn't
still
anything.
sober. That's incredible that
Oh,
you
I had 12
maintained your
years clean and I
sobriety.
hit the lowest point of my life. Like I slept on subway trains when I was using. I slept on subway trains in
Mhm.
1989 and in 1990. Like I had no home and nowhere to go, and slept on a subway train and managed to be happy. You know what I mean? Like managed to find somebody to hook up with to get loaded and find my way through it. Losing that business and that relationship after 4 or 5 years of trying to rebuild it, um, just hit me hard, and I went into a really, really big depression. I was struggling with both my children, because I was struggling with their mother, and I was trying to be a father, a responsible father, and the mother was really mad at me for leaving, so she would direct them away from me, so to say. So
Right.
uh, just the struggles with them, and that I couldn't really get them to love me the way they loved her,
Mm.
and just the loss of so many relationships because of the loss of that business, and then just this crushing self hatred. I was
Yeah.
pretty much suicidal. Like, I would look on Google at I would find articles about how children dealt with their parent suicide, like how they survived the parental suicide. um and I was in therapy, thank God.
And
I
so the
never talked
therapy helped. Oh,
I never
good.
talked to the therapist that I felt like killing myself, and looked at that stuff. I never did, but talked about my problems, and she's very, very patient. She put out a lot of fires, and she was trying. Now, as a therapist, I see what she was doing back then. You
Mm.
know what I mean?
You're on the other side of it now.
Right. I mean, she was trying to get to the root of what it is that I can't stand about myself. Why can't I start to learn to love myself? Why can't I see that this past 12 years I've done some really wonderful things, and I'm a really wonderful person? Um, but years and years of that therapy, um, along with what was going on in my life during from between 12 years clean and say 16 years clean. So when the business fell apart, and I was in therapy with her, I also started school in January of 2012. Um, so I had been out of my business for a little over a year, but I went to college in January 2012. The kid who had no belief in himself, the kid who got thrown out of high school, kid who failed every class for his last 5 years in school, went to college, and
Wow. What were you going to college for?
applied psychology and
Okay.
organizational behavior.
What
And
made you, what was it that drew you to that decision?
Well, I didn't want to be in sales anymore. I wanted to get into the field working with people in recovery, and I got a break. Somebody gave me a job, a real lousy job. Well, it was a good job, but lousy pay. It was like $9.38 an hour. I was a nighttime house manager in a halfway house. Um, and I knew if I want to get anywhere in this field, you need at least a bachelor's degree. So I went to college and worked in the field, and I worked for that place. I worked two jobs and sometimes three jobs the whole time I was in Albright College. I then got a job for an organization, a recovery community organization called the Raise Project, and worked with people trying to get clean through medically assisted treatment. And I also worked time for an organization called ARC, which was a residential placement facility for adjudicated teenagers, where these kids would get sent to a residential placement facility for 6 to 9 months. And I was an assistant counselor there. And while I was doing that, I was going to college. I don't know how. I
Amazing.
mean,
So
honestly, I
that
don't know
must have been
how.
incredibly empowering to you to be able to take your own life experiences and help others
I
get
mean, I
through
really
their
loved what I
difficulty.
did for work. I did. I loved what I did for work. I got a break 3 years after that and got a job as a counselor assistant, but I mean, it was doing clinical work, and everything counted as clinical work in an agency called Guadentia. And that's where I went for treatment, not in that same rehab, but for the agency. And I mean, so it was a real slow grind. I mean, there was years in between 2012 and 2016 that I hated myself, and I go to sleep crying sometimes. And but what happened was I became so busy from working 2 to 3 jobs, and because I still did my business on the side too for another company that was once a competitor that was helping me out. But anyway, um, like, I was on autopilot. It's the only way I can put it, because I was in
So
an
did the work
accelerated.
become another form of addiction or
No, not at
avoidance or
all.
anything
Not at
like that?
all.
It was just you loved it so much and you were passionate and you,
I loved what I did,
that's so great.
and school was really, really hard. I remember it was just like, oh my God, man. We were in an accelerated degree program. In my first 2 years,
Oof.
they cut a semester, 16-week semester, into 7 weeks. And then when you start your major, they cut a 16-week semester into 5 weeks. So it took one class a week for 5 weeks, and they hit you with 20 hours of homework a week while I'm working two jobs. You know what I mean? And like,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
yeah, the first thing that I did that I realized was self-esteem raising was in 2000, January 2015. I was selling body jewelry for a company. That's
I
what my
remember
business
that.
was. And I was selling body jewelry for a company that was my competitor. The owner was my friend, but the rest of the people that worked there hated me, and I was treated like shit. Like, I mean, just treated really badly by their CFO and their head accountant over money, because I didn't want to get paid the way that they paid. I wanted to get paid on a weekly because I owned a business and my life was set up for that. But these guys just put me through hell. And when I reached a point where I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I talked to the owner and I said, Mark, I want out. I'll tell you what, man, give me $1,000. You can keep all my accounts. I just want out the door. I want it on my terms, not theirs. And he gave me 2,000. And I mean, that was the first thing I did, that I did out of self-esteem, out of saying, I'm not going to allow
You're
these
worth more.
assholes to treat me like shit
Yay.
just so I could keep making money. Fuck them. I'll find another way to do this, but I will not be treated like that ever again. Um,
Would you say, because one of the questions that I have is, what is the most powerful thing you learned when you were becoming sober? In the process, what was,
the most powerful thing I learned is I'm not the piece of shit I thought I was for my whole
yeah.
life.
Oh.
That's
And
the
your
most
self
powerful.
worth, this part about feeling worthy
Absolutely.
enough to ask for more is a huge step. I would, and just for anybody, but especially when you've gone through what you've had to go through, I can imagine that must have
Uh,
been a very powerful moment to love yourself enough to say no. This isn't acceptable. I deserve more. And
well, right.
wow.
I mean, so that was the first, and then there's a number of friendships, or things that really shouldn't have been friendships, that were things that I held on to for a while, that I just learned, no, this needs to be let go of. I'm not. That's from the body jewelry days. I used to remember, I used to say that, like, everything from the body jewelry days is going to get surgically removed somehow, some way, and did, one by one, couple of relationships with people who were and weren't friends, that I just said, I don't need this in my life. Um, continuing through therapy, and having this woman consistently try to find ways for me to realize I wasn't the piece of shit I thought I was, while getting excellent grades in school, doing really good at the two jobs I had, having things happen during those periods, and then graduating. I remember close before I graduated, there was a kid at ARC that he was there for 9 months, and I was there with him the whole 9 months from start to finish. And he was just this little punk from a bad neighborhood, drug dealer, thug, who on Sundays or weekends, I drive him home, and I built a relationship with him, you know. And when we were in the car together, he was a good kid. You know what I mean? When he was in front of
Hmm.
the other 15 kids, he was an asshole sometimes, but he stopped. Like, his behavior stopped when I was on shift. Like, he wouldn't act out on behaviors that he would with other counselors when I was on shift. And I remember he was about to leave. Like, he screwed up leaving for like 2 months, because every time he'd go home, he'd smoke pot and they would extend his stay. But he finally got to the point where they were going to let him go home. It was the night before he went home, and I was getting off my shift. And I came up to him and I said, "Hey, man, I'm really proud of you, and I appreciate the time you and I spent together, and I really hope that you continue to move forward." He goes, "Yeah, whatever, Mike." You know what I mean? Like, kind of blew me off. I felt like shit, you know what I mean? And I'm out
Hmm.
there and I'm about to swipe my card to get out, and I'm like fucking pissed almost, you know what I mean? Like, what a little punk. And so these kids, when they went from one room to the next, they're not allowed to do anything without staff supervision. And I heard him say crossover, and the other staff on duty said, "Mike, hold up a minute." So I waited, and he let the kid come over into the other room, and the kid didn't say a word. He just hugged me.
It was sad that you were leaving.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was just that. I
Hmm.
mean, it was this big, huge hug that I mean, man, it took everything for me not to break down in the door. Once I got out the door, I lost my shit. I almost did now, remembering it. It just felt so good
Hmm.
because I knew first, within a matter of 5 minutes, going to think, wow, I really thought I got through to this freaking kid.
You
And
impacted him.
and I didn't get nowhere with him to him to come in there and hug me. He just didn't want to do it in front of everybody. Fine,
Right. Oh. Oh.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
But it was the
Mm.
most heartfelt hug I ever had in my life. I believe he might have been crying, Um, not a word was said during that hug, but it changed my life.
That's
It made me realize that this is
powerful.
where I belong. This is the job, whatever it is. This is the field I need to be in because this is where I get through to people, and I make shit money. That job paid $11 an hour or something like that. But it's not about that. To get that feeling that I got from that hug was the greatest feeling I had in
I'm
God
choked
knows
up.
how long.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it
That
was.
is, I would think that what could be more meaningful than to what I see is turning your pain into gain, taking that,
Yeah,
what you went through and using it to help others. What could be more empowering and just helping your soul, filling your
I think
soul?
God had a real. That's funny that you said that, and I'll explain why in a minute. I think God had a real part in it. I mean, I think He really wanted me to show me how I'm not the piece of shit I thought I was, because where I went immediately after that kid like kind of blew me off, and I was checking out, was wow, I just not good enough to even get this kid. I mean, I'm a piece of fucking, not a piece of shit, but I'm not good enough at this job to get this kid to even say goodbye to me after the last 9 months of being a part of this kid's life and trying to get him to change his behaviors, to feeling so good about myself because he came in there and did that. You know what I mean? I think God had a
Yes.
real huge part in this. So you see on Facebook every now and again, I write parts of
Yes.
my story here and there, and I
I love that.
hashtag them. I hashtag them my peaceful soul, because eventually it's going to be a book called My Peaceful Soul.
Oh, I love it. I love
Um,
it. I
yeah,
love it. Yay. That's wonderful.
yeah, because I mean, I was literally a tortured soul. For from 2012 till about 15, um, tortured, just agonizing over destroying that business of all those years in addiction and fucking up, and then finally getting things right and screwing that up again. You know what I mean? And I mean, just not being in tune with my kids when I wanted to desperately. Losing a lot of relationships that I thought were really important to me that I found weren't later on. But I mean, just devastated. I never realized the level of devastation that I was in until years after that. Until writing about it and talking about it and understanding that. I mean, the gaining a peaceful soul after having a tortured soul, and through all the work that I went through to do it. um, I realized how bad that I, not bad, how hurt that I was. I was literally hurt. All the anger, all of that stuff comes from hurt. I was just really hurt. A lot of people had let me down. I had felt I'd let myself down. Um, and I was just hurt, and didn't want to feel that hurt anymore. I didn't want to die. I mean, while I was looking at suicide shit all the time and thinking about it, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to feel that pain anymore.
You don't want to feel that
Um,
pain anymore. It was the
right.
pain. You're like, that just becomes insurmountable when you get to that lowest place.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I
I've
mean, it
been there.
was
I'm not an I'm not an addict, but I've had my other issues. I'm the codependent on the end
right.
of that's my parents were alcoholics and family
Mhm.
members were alcoholics. So I had a lot of experience with it from the outside. But those things affect you. So yeah, this stuff affects everyone.
Oh,
So
yeah.
um I had a question. Well, I think you've actually answered it, like what were the most enlightening things that really made you just go, whoa. And it seems that obviously this moment with this young kid, and that you were able to break through and reach him and you
Yeah.
realize, oh my God, this really is what I'm meant to do. That's
And
cool.
there are things like that that played out throughout like my career. When I started at that agency, Godenzia, and I worked in Siena House, it's an inpatient rehab for men on state parole. Nobody in there goes voluntarily. They give their parole officer a positive test for drugs, and the PO sends them to treatment. And so at that time, the self-esteem was coming back, and I was learning different techniques of helping people. And every day people would ask me, how you doing, Mr. Mike? How you doing, Mr. Mike? And my same answer, I'm very repetitious. I use consistency because it's important. And I would say, man, I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful, man. I slept on subways and I woke up in a bed today. You know what I mean? Now,
Wow.
there's a whole story behind it. Like, so when I worked at that place, ARC, there was a counselor there, Damone, young 35-year-old African-American man who would always say he's wonderful when I asked him how he's doing. And it would piss me off because I wanted to be fucking wonderful and I wasn't. And I would be like, how's this damn guy always wonderful? And he was really good as a counselor. He's the only counselor I learned from in there. A young African-American guy from the hood, you know, just my complete opposite. And man, after about 3 months, I just said, fuck it, man, this guy's full of shit. I'm going to ask him, you know. I said, dude, you cannot be always wonderful. Just don't give me that line of shit. How could you be always wonderful? And he got this goofy look on his face and he smiled. He goes, man, because my mood is my choice. And that hit me hard. I was like, it can't be that easy, man. It just can't be that easy. But I said, it's worth a try. You know what I mean? It's worth a try. Let me try that out. So I'd wake up and when I start feeling certain things, I would say, my mood is my choice, and I'd feel better. And then I got to work at Sienna House, and these knuckleheads would ask me how I'm doing every day. And I would say, man, I slept on subways. I woke up in a bed, man. My life couldn't be better. You know, I'm always wonderful, always wonderful. And one day, 3-4 months down the road, they cornered me after a group and they said, Mr. Mike, you cannot be always wonderful. It's not possible. It's not possible. Everybody has a shitty day. And I just like smiled and said, you know, my mood is my choice. And I only learned this a little while ago, but it's the truth. My mood is my choice. And a lot of them shook their head. A lot of them said, you're crazy, and walked away. But like 3 months later, 2 months later, maybe. No, it couldn't have been. It only had to be like a month later. I was coming into work, and one of the guys who was in that rehab was leaving work. And I hadn't seen him because, so when they leave the treatment, they have an opportunity to go upstairs to a halfway house. And he was in the halfway house for about a month. And I was coming to work, and he was leaving to go to work, and he seen me, and I said, oh man, look at you, how you doing? And he got this stupid look on his face, and he said, I'm always wonderful.
Oh, he did. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I got the goosebumps. That's
Yeah.
really,
I mean,
oh,
I cry every time I tell the story, but it's another one of those times where I realize, holy shit, like we have the power to impact people's lives by our mood, by our attitude, and by our consistent
influence.
behavior.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, the look he got on his face, I almost knew he was going to say it. And then he said it. I said, that son of a bitch stole my line. But I stopped dead in my tracks and started crying because it hit me real hard. Like,
He got
if
it.
it wasn't so much that he got it. It was more along the lines that if I do this, I have the power to affect people's life in a positive way that I've never done before. And I am. He's living proof of it. So I cannot be this piece of shit. You know, I cannot be this scumbag that I see myself as. That's who I was, and those are the things that I did while I was powerless over it. But I've changed. And I mean, that was the real true start of gaining self-esteem. Like when he did that, that was the start of it. And I started doing things like, remember, in therapy that whole time, she started, like, she always suggested things that I never did that I started doing. And it started helping, you know. And then I graduated college a year after. Boom, you know, I mean, I was up high. I was like, wow, this really, I mean, this is working. This is recovery. You know, I spent at that point in time, 17 years clean or something like that. I was always a person in recovery, but never really recovering. I was recovering when the self-esteem started coming back. I was recovering when really feeling good about myself started coming back. I was recovering when, you know, you talk about how like certain relationships you're going to let go of because they're not healthy for it. Both my kids and me struggled really hard and they loved the living daylights out of their mom because a lot of stuff came out years later. And I
Ah,
wanted them to love me. You know what I mean? I wanted them to love me. And I thought long and hard about, okay, maybe I can give in here or give in there. And I never did. You know, I said, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. I don't care if they never talk to me again. I'm not going to do it. And man, it happened like in succession because they're 7 years apart. My older daughter turned 18 and bought her car and was working and being really, really responsible. Hit it off from that point and became friendly. You know, she started getting an understanding of what went on through adult eyes rather than kids' eyes. Say my internet connection is unstable. Are you getting me?
yeah, we had just
Okay.
a small glitch. Well, we got
Okay.
you. Yeah, you were talking about your daughter, and maybe now that she's becoming an adult, she can understand life from an adult
Oh yeah.
perspective.
Well, at that
Yeah.
point, she said, Dad, you were like the biggest asshole. I mean, I remember being in school and my phone would shut off by the time I got there and wouldn't turn back on until I left because you could do that on the website, like for Verizon. So I didn't want her texting in school. So I like had that control. You know, she said, Dad, you were like the biggest asshole, man. I couldn't do anything that my other friends could do. And I hated you for it for years, but I love you for it now. I understand.
Tough
And
love.
her and I got very, very close. And then I went through 6 years of my younger daughter's teenage hell,
Oh boy.
where, man, I felt like shooting myself in the head. That kid was me times 20. You know, we had a lot of struggles as well. Um, she came to live with me at 16. And I mean, we were at each other's throats. I actually had to put her out. You cannot live here anymore. Her behaviors were that bad. And she went back with her mother, which was not the ideal situation. She should have went into some kind of treatment. Um, and I hate to say this, I mean, her mom was in a relapse for years and it all came out. That's why she came to live with me. And a year after she went back home, she has to come back. Maybe a year and a half, she has to come back. And I noticed a huge change in her behaviors. And it was, I mean, what woke her up was watching her mom.
Oh
Her mom,
yes,
her
I
mom was in really,
understand
really bad shape. Her
that
mom's been in treatment.
contrast.
Right. Her mom was in treatment quite a few times. And I mean, so now, years later, she's turning 20 on Monday. So 4 years later, her and I are closer. The only way I can explain it is like I have the relationship I always wanted with both kids.
Amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing. What an
and it
amazing
goes through what you
story.
say, like just the consistency and the not giving up. Like I really truly just had such little faith in myself at a time where I thought about, okay, the hell with it, man. If it means like letting them skip school, if it means letting them smoke pot, if it means, you know, letting them sleep over somebody's house without calling to make sure that that's where they are, that's what I'm going to do. But not doing it, you know, I just wouldn't do it. And let me tell you something, man, these kids were vicious. They had a vicious mother who they watched, you know, and took cues from. So they thought it was okay to be like that to me too. Um, to
This
the
is
point.
great. Do you think that you would be interested in doing another segment on that, raising children while
Yeah,
you're doing everything that you're doing and what you learned about raising children? Because I think that would be so, there's so many people that struggle with what you went through that are like my niece, for one, navigating that and,
yeah.
the balance of it all. And I'm sure that's got to be incredibly overwhelming.
I don't have the answers. I mean, it was a really tough period. So like I said, they're 7 years apart. My older daughter was from my ex-wife's first marriage. I met her when she was 5 and adopted her when she was 7, when my younger daughter was born. So she turned 12 while my younger daughter was 4. And she didn't like, you know, so her and I struggled from the age of 12 to the age of 18 or 19. When she turned 18 or 19, my younger daughter turned 12 and the whole thing started
Start it
again. You
all
know what
over
I
again.
mean?
Oh my
And
gosh.
I didn't learn shit. I didn't really learn anything from the older one, except for how maybe to protect myself when things were flying. And I was not prepared for my younger daughter because she had a real lot of mental and emotional problems. She had severe anxiety, uh, real reactive attachment disorder type of things going on because like they were protective of their mother. Their mother really wasn't there, and they kind of raised themselves with their mother there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Hmm.
I mean, she was there, but not there.
My
She was
mom,
really,
you know,
she was
5
very,
children,
very
and my mom
involved
was
in
an
her career.
alcoholic, so and also very, much a narcissist, you know?
Right.
Not
Well,
that
that's
I
a lot
don't
of
love my
what their
mother,
mother
it's
was.
just yeah, these were things she learned from her upbringing, and
Right.
it just got passed on, and then it got passed on to us siblings,
Right.
so
A lot of the
I
same
understand
with their
completely.
mother, and she was really heavily involved in her career. Like she got a master's degree. Um, Around the time my life was falling apart, she got a master's degree. So there's other reasons why these kids were leaning towards her and not me. I mean, my life was falling apart. I mean, they never seen the financial mess. They never seen the trouble from the financial mess that I was in because I kept the same house. I don't know how managed to stay in the same house and then moved to somewhere else afterwards. But during that time, then their mother like destroyed her career before anybody knew she was using, and she got evicted from 3 different houses in a 3-year period, or less than a 3-year period. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So they started seeing things different, like saying, "Well, wow, well, wait, Dad had some problems. He lost the business, and we were always fighting, but." Dad always had food for us. He always had a house for us. He always had the same house for us. He always had. Sorry, my nose is itching like crazy.
A
Dad was
little more
always very, very
stability, a
right. Dad was always very
stability.
stable. Could you excuse me for 1 second? Can I just go blow my nose or
Absolutely.
scratch my nose? My
Absolutely, yeah, I got an allergy thing.
they're driving me. That's one of the
Actually, this is good timing. We're coming up on an hour.
okay.
I would love to continue this conversation, um,
Anytime.
and talk about the child rearing part. Not so much from a place that you have all the answers, but just sharing your story and what you struggled with and what you've learned along the way, and are
Hmm.
continuing to learn, I'm sure. And then also one other thing that you had mentioned in our talks before this was, male messages. I would love to cover that topic with you because I'm not a
Sure.
male. So I think it would just be incredibly beneficial to the
Sure.
viewers to hear about what you've learned about that particular as
We
well.
could call it the Mike and Trish show.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, I this school, the School of Hard Knocks, this idea to do this show came to me, and I've been putting it off, and I finally just said, this is the year to make it happen. And I was just thinking the other day, gosh, I know other people that would want to share their story, and I thought of you, and here we are.
Nancy
Here we
doesn't
are
think she's
doing
getting enough
this.
attention,
Hi,
so
puppy. Aw. So I would love to do another segment, and we can pick up where we left off. And then, if you want to do another one, that would be great. Again, this is just about your story
I will do whatever I can to help you.
and to help people. This is why I'm
Hmm?
doing this because,
Okay.
I mean, people will go to therapy and all the different things, but I think there's nothing like the power of someone that has been through something, and they can share that experience with others and help them get through it and help them to know
Hmm.
they're not alone. This is really why I'm doing this, to reach out to people like my brother.
Hmm.
I didn't get a chance to do that with him, and
Well, I
so
mean, I
this is
get a
my
sense
chance.
that you feel some of the blame for that, and you don't have any of it. Um, I mean, we want to help people. We do. I mean, many people died in my care over the years, whether it was professional or people who I knew from the 12-step community that couldn't quite keep it together enough to stay, made the decision to go try to use 1 or 2 more times and died. I had a former patient, hit me up on Facebook and tell me he's thinking about killing himself. And I mean, I tried to talk to him a number of times, And then he like kind of said, no, I wasn't. I was just really just feeling down that day. That's not what I want to do. I don't feel that way. I talked to some people that he knew, and they said, "Oh, he always threatens that, but he never really means it." And when you know, man, like a month later, saw it on Facebook, the kid killed himself. Um, had no power. We have no power over people's decisions. The only thing we have is influence. And I truly
Yes.
believe that people's influence, we're influenced by who we choose to influence. Um, that young man at Arc had a huge influence over me. You know what I mean? Um,
Yes.
and there's many people who have a lot of clean time who have no influence over me whatsoever. Um, it's who we choose to let in. So it's not the person's, never anybody else's fault but the person who did it. Sometimes they just couldn't be helped. Um,
Yeah. And that's,
yeah. So
and I just didn't get to this point until now. I wasn't ready. I didn't have
right.
enough um understanding yet. And so now that I do, it's like I wasn't able to help my brother, but I can certainly help the Davids of the
Absolutely.
world. I can certainly
Absolutely.
try to reach out to people like him that
Mhm.
there's another way
Yes,
and you
absolutely.
have a
And
choice. Yes. And
it's
that is
hard because that like everybody has a choice. But again, I mean, people with the disease of addiction, whether it's alcohol, heroin, crack, anything, you know what I mean? Cough syrup. When they get to that point, I mean, there's certain times there's no longer a choice. Depending on how advanced the disease is, and if there's treatment or no treatment. I mean, there are times where a healthy decision is just not in the make is not
available
possible.
to you
It's
because of
not
the
available to them
illness,
because the
because of the
other
disease.
right, the other parts of the brain are overwhelming the part of the brain that's responsible for decision making. And this is science. It's not just imagination. It's not just talk. It's science. I mean, there's MRI, magnetic images, and other types of photography showing that these parts of the brain are active when the other parts aren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
And
they kind of
I
take
mean,
over.
the 12-step community loves talking about how this is a disease, but they put a lot of stuff on choices and decisions that they don't understand, that the brain of an addict sometimes can't make them decisions.
Wow, I would
um,
love to talk about that. That's powerful. And
it's
this is something you've been sharing on your page for quite some time now. So I
right.
think this would be a great opportunity for you to talk more about that
Sure.
for sure. I'm going to write a note down here about that. The choice.
A lot of people in the 12-step community don't like my talking about that, but too bad. I mean, because that's people's, the programs themselves are pretty much perfect, and they do not ever place blame upon somebody for relapse or for anything. But people in the rooms with many years clean can sometimes say to somebody, "Oh, you knucklehead, you went and used, you should have called me." Maybe that person didn't have, and there you go, man. You're just hitting somebody in the self-esteem. You should have called me. You know what I mean? Person didn't
Oh,
have the person didn't have the mental wherewithal at that time to do it, man. The other part of their brain was winning. You don't have power over that. I mean, there's things going on in your brain. You can't stick your hand in there and make it stop. It's happening.
and this is
Um,
great. This is a new development, I feel, and that is so important when you're in that cycle, when you're in the
right.
disease. I would
Right.
love to talk about that for sure. Um, but we are heading on up
Okay.
to a little over an hour now. Um, I'm excited. I thank you so much. I can't,
Anytime.
I'm so emotional right now. I'm trying to keep myself together. I'm just so very appreciative of your time. You're so busy. You got so much on your plate and you made the time to do this. And it is
Anytime.
so appreciated. And if you want to do another show, I'm very much looking forward to it. I think there's so much more that I'm going to be able to learn from hearing you tell your
Let me
story
know what
and
you need.
experiences. Thank you, Mike.
Got you,
Um,
Trish.
and I'm looking forward to next time. Well, we'll
Cool.
be in touch on Messenger. And yeah, I'm so appreciative. I'm looking forward to the next show and digging in and talking deeply on these issues for
Wonderful.
sure.
I'm ready for it.
All right.
Take
Thank
care
you
of
so
yourself.
much. You
See ya.
too.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.